What's up, everyone? This is Darkon25, and this is part 2 of my Morrigan guide. Today's episode will be featuring team optimization and synergy. We got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. So I get a lot of questions sent to me, and by far the most popular question has to do with this topic. And some of those questions include, should I use Morrigan as an anchor, in the middle, on point, zoning, or rush down? What about the assist? How do I build around her? What attack options play defensive minded? Do I pick? How do I manage it? I'm talking about team optimization, and I'm going to show you how you can either build a team around her or just stick her in the middle of the team you already have. So let's get into that right now. So you've decided to go with Morrigan, but the big question is going to be how to build around her. And before we get into team building and team synergy, let's first talk about some of the pros and cons of starting Morrigan at the various positions. And we'll start off with some of the pros of starting Morrigan on point. And the first pro is going to be that she has mid-range health. And the reason that's a pro is because she doesn't have low health. And the next pro is a big one, and that she is deadly with assists. And the reason that is because Morrigan can benefit from assists that help rush down or zoning. For instance, if you have sentinel drones, those can help out no matter how you play. If you are rush down, they will lock down the opponent, and they can also help a lot if you'd rather zone and throw out fireballs. And the next pro to starting Morrigan on point is going to be that you won't have to deal with her limited DHC options. And this is in terms of confirming into hypers with DHCs. And that's because Morrigan's finishing shower, the rockets move really slow, and it's sometimes hard to confirm into it. And it's the same with her level 3 and with her Shadow Servant. And the final pro to starting Morrigan on point is going to be her great tacking options. And the reason for that is because Morrigan is one of the few characters that can tack after a hyper. So you can do your full combo, end it with a hyper, and if you're in the corner, you have the option to tack, which gives you the option to steal meter, gain meter, or extend combos if you have a character that's able to. So let's get to some of the cons of starting Morrigan on point. And the first con is going to be that she has mid-range health. And while it's better than having low range health, it's not as good as having high health. So teams that have a really high damaging combo character on point with really good DHC options in the 2 spot are going to be able to kill her. And that's never a good thing. And the next con to starting Morrigan on point is going to be that you won't be able to take advantage of her Dark Harmonizer, which is, in my opinion, her best assist. And this could be big if you have a character, an anchor character that thrives on having a lot of meter, like Phoenix or Strider, and you want to be able to pull meter as quickly as possible. And if you have Morrigan on point, you won't be able to do that. And the next con is going to deal with her limited DHC options. And this is in terms of DHCing from Morrigan to another character. And the reason why it's limited is because finishing shower, which is her best hyper to end a combo with, does not have soft or hard knockdown. So if you do it way up in the air at the end of a combo, it's going to be hard to DHC into other characters. And it's going to be limited as well. Another con to starting Morrigan on point is going to be because of a relatively low damage output, and it just takes so much work to do high damage combos with Morrigan, but in most cases she's just simply not going to be able to kill most characters in one combo. She's not a one-touch character, so you're going to have to rely on resets and zoning to do most of her killing. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's start talking about the pros of starting Morrigan as an anchor. And the first pro is that you will be able to take advantage of Harmonizer, and you will be able to gain a lot of meter in a very short amount of time. And another thing you'll be able to take advantage of running Morgan in the anchor spot is that you're going to benefit from her extreme speed boost from X Factor level 3. And additionally, Morgan is an extremely capable solo character, and she doesn't have to rely on assists to be extremely effective. And the final pro to starting Morgan in the anchor spot is going to be that she can be a matchup nightmare to even some of the best anchor characters in the game. She can rush down with the best of them and zone with the best of them, and that's an extremely deadly quality. And of course, there's going to be some cons to starting Morgan in the anchor spot, and the first is going to be that her X Factor level 3 can be pretty difficult to control. And while she does have kill combos in X Factor level 3, the damage output from her X Factor level 3 is still relatively low, and it's going to take a lot of work to get those kill combos. And the final thing that you're going to have to worry about with starting Morgan in the anchor spot is that she can't easily convert off grabs, and you're going to have to spend meter to do so. And in some cases, this can be quite annoying to deal with. And if you're going against a player that upbacks a lot, sometimes grabbing is the only legitimate way to get in on them. And if you don't have the meter to Shadow Servant off your grabs, it can be quite annoying to deal with. Let's get into some of the pros of starting Morgan in the second slot, which is the slot that I start Morgan in for my team. And the first one is obviously going to be the ability to use Harmonizer. And again, you want to be able to gain meter as quickly as possible, and that's always a good thing to have that much meter. And this next pro is going to be the reason why I start Morgan in the 2 slot, and that's to provide a handcuff to your anchor. And if you're not familiar with this term handcuff, it basically means insurance. And if your anchor character gets snapped back in and killed, you still have Morgan as an extremely capable anchor character that can take their place. Another reason why I keep Morgan in the 2 slot is because of her safe DHC options, and this is in terms of DHCing from a character to Morgan. And the reason why it's so safe is because she has finishing shower to keep characters in block stun. And she also has the ability to directly challenge other hypers with her Shadow Servant. And she also has the option of instantly pressuring with Astral Vision and her Fireballs. So she has a lot of options to DHC from. And finally, with Morgan in the second slot, this does allow her to benefit from at least 1 assist. Of course, Morgan has some cons to being started in the second slot, and the first one is going to be her DHC options are limited. And this is in terms of extending combos through her DHCs, and unless you're in the corner, it's going to be somewhat tough confirming off of her DHCs, and in most cases, it's going to be impossible. Now, another con to starting Morgan in the 2 slot is that if you are on your point character and you want to tack into Morgan, she doesn't have a lot of options to extend those tack combos. She is a fly character, but she can't extend combos like other fly characters can. So that's something you want to think about. Lastly, you're going to want to be aware that Morgan is not a great assist character. And this is in terms of assists that help characters get in or help zone. Morgan can't do that with her assists, so you're going to want to be aware of that as well. You're mostly going to want to take these pros and cons with a bit of a grain of salt though, and that's because another major influence in terms of where you position Morgan is going to come from the 2 teammates that you choose to surround her with, as well as the assists that they grant. So you've decided to go with Morgan, but let's say that you're not sure on how to build a team around her. I'm going to show you some of the assists and some of the characteristics you're going to be looking for to build a team around Morrigan and how to synergize with her. So here's a list of some of the assists that you're going to want to look for when building a team around Morrigan. You're going to, of course, want to have look for lockdown assists, and these are assists like Doom hidden missiles or Sentinel drones or Amaterasu's Cold Star. Assists meant to keep opponents in one place so that they can be mixed up or they can be zoned more efficiently. Another thing you're going to want to look for are zoning tools, and zoning tools are anything that helps Morrigan take up more space on the screen. And this could include anything like frontside beam assists like Dr. Doom's beam or Magneto's disruptor, but this can also include assists with projectiles that reach parts of the screen that Morrigan can't. Assists like Dante's Jam Session or Doctor Strange's Daggers of Danak, or even Dr. Doom's hidden missiles. These assists can reach places that Morrigan's projectiles can't, and they'll help a lot when you need to knock a player out of the sky. Another type I like to look for are what I call get off me assists, and these include anything that pushes opponents away from Morrigan. Assists like Akuma's Tatsu or any anti-air assists, or in some cases even wall bounces like Rocket Raccoon's Log or Ghost Rider's Chains of Rebutal. And the idea is that you want to create separation to do a safe astral vision or fireball spam. In the case with the wall bouncing assists, if you're in astral vision, you can also use those to confirm into almost full screen soul fist loops. And of course, anti-air assists will help defend against characters that like to come at you from awkward angles. And finally, you'll also want to look for assists that hit low. And some assists that hit low include Felicia's Rolling Slide, She-Hulk's Torpedo, or Wesker's Samurai Edge. And if you can find assists like these that hit low, it will enable you to do high-low unblockables using Morrigan's Shell Kick. So just in summary, when you're looking for other characters to build around Morrigan and you're trying to decide on assists, you want to look for assists that cover these bases. But more importantly, you want to look for assists that cover multiple bases. The goal is going to be to cover as many of these characteristics as you can, given the 2 assist slots that you have. So if you're looking for an example of a balanced assist composition for Morrigan, a pair of assists that I would go for would be Dr. Doom's Hidden Missiles and Rocket Raccoon's Log, because they cover almost all of these bases. Dr. Doom's assist covers lockdown, and it also zones extremely well, it also chips well, and it OTGs to boot. And Rocket Raccoon's Log is a really good get off me assist, and it also wall bounces, so it confirms into astral vision loops. Another really good assist composition for Morrigan, I would say, would be Dante's Jam Session and Magneto's Disruptor. Jam Session would be used to cover way up in the air where Morrigan's fireballs can't reach, and Magneto's Disruptor could cover the front side when Morrigan's up in the air raining fireballs from above. Aside from looking for assists, you also want to look for a couple of characteristics when building your team around Morrigan. And one of those characteristics are meter guzzlers. And any character like Phoenix or Strider that relies on having a lot of meter to do damage benefits a lot from Morrigan, because she can directly and indirectly gain a lot of meter in a short amount of time. She's a great battery character as well. And you'll also want to look for characters who can extend combos after attack. And these are normally characters with fly, like Doom or Sentinel, Storm, or Magneto. And you'll want to look for these characters because, again, Morrigan is one of the few characters that can do attack after a hyper. And you can end up doing a lot of damage if you can find one of these characters and put them behind her. Of course, there's also certain assist and characteristics that you want to avoid when looking to build a team around Morrigan, and one of those is the multi-hit assist. And of course, you want to avoid these because if you use them to confirm into combos, they're going to increase the damage scaling and lower the overall damage of your combos by a lot. And since the damage scaling on Morrigan's attacks is already really bad, you don't want to make it worse by adding more. And additionally, you're going to want to look out for meter assists, and you don't really need these because Morgan already has a meter assist, and so you can only summon one at a time, so you really don't need another one. And lastly, you're going to want to look out for assists that have hard knockdowns, and you don't really want these assists because Morgan only has one OTG, and that's her Shadow Servant. And going from an assist straight into Shadow Servant just isn't an effective way of doing damage. And some characters that you want to watch out for are ones that rely on OTGs to do damage, and none of Morgan's assists have OTG capabilities, so you want to watch out for that. And finally, you're going to want to avoid characters that are too reliant on assists, and these are characters like Wolverine and Hagar, who really have to rely on assists to get in and do their damage, and Morgan's assist simply can't provide them with enough protection or coverage. So now that we know what to look for, let's start building some teams. So let's start with my team, and I'll show you how I get synergy from them. And my team consists of Morgan, Magneto, and Chris. So the way I go about building a team is I want to either decide the anchors or the on-point characters first. So with this particular set of players, I think the first decision is pretty easy. We want Chris to be in the first slot because we want him as far away from the anchoring position as possible. So that's going to leave us with Magneto and Morgan to decide who to put in the anchoring spot. And this can come down to preference, it could come down to strategy, but personally for me, I'm much more comfortable with Magneto in the anchoring spot. So that's going to leave Morgan in the second slot, which is perfect for me because that gives me the opportunity to use her assist. So I'll have a huge meter pool when it comes time for Magneto to anchor, and also that leaves Morgan in the second slot as a handcuff to Magneto if something were to happen to him and he were to die. And also with Chris on point, he doesn't really have to rely on Morgan for an assist because I have Magneto's disruptor behind him. Let's see if we can do it with some random teammates. Let's see, we'll have Morgan, and let's team her up with Strider and Nemesis, and let's see if we can get some synergy out of these players. So like before, we want to decide the anchoring or on-point spots first, and like the previous team, I think the first decision is easy. We're going to want Nemesis in the on-point slot. And Nemesis doesn't seem to me like a strong anchoring character, so we'll put him in the first slot. So with our on-point slot having been decided, the next one is also going to be really easy to decide, and we're going to want Strider as our anchor. With Morgan in the 2 slot, it's going to allow us to take advantage of her assist, which is going to give us a ton of meter, which is going to help Strider a lot. It's going to have plenty of meter for him to use Ouroboros with. Now we have one particular issue with this team, and it's that we have OTGing problems. We have a hard knockdown assist in Strider, but we have 2 characters who both can't really OTG without using meter in Nemesis and Morgan. But I think if we, instead of using Strider's dive kicking assist, and we use his wall bouncing assist, it might better fit this team and help Morgan out a lot more. Alright, so let's try out another team. Let's see if we can get weird. We'll start off with Morgan, of course, and let's throw in a Shinko and an X-23, and let's see if we can get something going with these characters. So again, let's see if we can decide either our point character or our anchor character first. And with this set of players, I think it'd be safe to assume that we want Shinko as far from the anchoring slot as possible. And we also want her early so that we can get her gold armor up so we can use her as an assist. So we're going to put her in the first slot. So now we have to decide who we want in the anchoring spot. And both characters that we have left are great anchors, but I think if we put Morgan in the second slot, we're going to have so much meter, it's going to allow us to use some dirty dirt nap tricks with X23. So we're going to put Morgan in the second slot and X23 in the anchoring slot. So just some of the general observations I have with this particular lineup. We can go about things a couple of different ways. And one of those ways is we can play extremely lame with Shinko to start, play defensively, throw out projectiles, and at the same time call out Morgan's assist to give us a bunch of meter to start. And we can use that meter to go gold with Shinko, DHC safely into Morgan, and then play super lame with Morgan fireballs and gold armor Shinko assist. And that could be a pretty good strategy. And additionally, the opponent's also going to have to worry about possible high-low unblockable setups using Morgan's shell kick, which hits high, and X23's ankle slice, which hits low. So that's something else that the opponent's going to have to worry about. That's also a plus. So yeah, that kind of didn't work out. I was trying to find a team that wouldn't have any synergy, but it ended up having some pretty amazing synergy. But let's see if we can do another one really quickly. And of course, we'll start off with Morgan. And let's go with a She-Hulk, because you hardly see her ever. And Iron Man. I've only seen one in the last month. So let's go with those three. So I thought about this one a lot, but I realized that thinking about it wasn't going to help. So I decided to go into the lab and try out a few things, and I found out that putting Morgan in the point slot is actually a really good idea. And here's why. Iron Man and She-Hulk both have really nice assists for Morgan on point. She-Hulk having an assist that hits low for obvious unblockable setups. But Iron Man actually has a really awesome assist, and it's not his beam. It's actually his repulsor. And the reason why it's so nice is because if you land it defensively, it gives you an opportunity to do a safe mirror hyper. And if you actually land one on an opponent while you have mirror hyper on, it floats him at a perfect height. And it actually confirms into Soul Fist loops, which is pretty awesome. So that's going to leave She-Hulk and Iron Man to decide who we want for the anchoring spot. And this is kind of a tough decision, but I think Iron Man, I don't know if he has any overheads, but if he does, that's great. So because we can put him in the second slot, and we can use overhead high-low unblockables with She-Hulk as an assist. So that's a pretty good reason to put Iron Man in the second slot. But also, She-Hulk might be one of those characters that has just enough health so that some X-Factor level 3 combos can't kill her. So that might be a good reason to put her in the third slot. And she is pretty quick, and I have been beaten by anchoring She-Hulks before. So that seems like a pretty good lineup. So now that we've covered everything around Morgan, let's start talking about Morgan herself and what to do when you get into an actual match. So just to be general about Morgan's gameplay, I look at it as if there's 3 different ways that you can go about formulating a strategy with her. So I'll cover a little bit of some of the basics if you want to do the first, and that's the rushdown game. And the main goal of rushdown is that you're trying to keep your opponent in one place. And the reason for that is because you want to be able to mix them up not only high-low, but you want to be able to mix them up left-right as well. And the more opportunities you have to mix them up, the better chance you'll have of finally opening up your opponent. And the key to this mindset is diversity. And you want to do as many mix-ups as you can, and you never want to do the same mix-up 2 times in a row. If you're doing it right, your opponent's going to try to create separation. Don't give him that space. If you're having issues with push block, try only using light attacks, because light attacks are really hard to time with push block. When you play online, there's going to be lag, and because there's lag, there's always that chance that you're going to drop your combo. But you want to practice enough so that the split second before you drop your combo, you can feel that it's about to happen. And if you can get to that point, you'll be able to prepare for it and be able to reset your opponent when you eventually drop your combo. And for more tips on how to rush down on opponents, check out part 1 of my Morrigan guide. I go over left-right mix-ups, high-low mix-ups, grab mix-ups, and how to get in on opponents. Morrigan's second approach is, of course, her zoning game. And with her zoning game, you have 2 goals. And the first is that you want to keep distance between you and your opponent at all times. And the second goal is that you want to fill the screen with as many projectiles as you possibly can. Before you can do this strategy, there's a couple of things you have to worry about. And the first thing is your input accuracy. There's a lot of input that goes into doing fireball spamming. For every fireball, you have to do a quarter circle forward and a quarter circle back to cancel it. And if you're throwing out 10 fireballs straight, that's a lot of input. There can also be a lot of micromanagement that you're going to have to work into all that input as well. And a couple of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be able to move on reaction to your opponent. You don't want to let your opponent get too close, so you're going to have to move around. Additionally, it can be a little tricky to call assists while you're doing your fireball spamming. And if you're having trouble with accidental snapbacks, here's a little trick for that. You want to call your assists after you've unfly canceled a fireball. There's a little window of opportunity as you're falling to the ground after an unfly that's perfect for calling assists. So if you fireball spam, you also want to know which frames are unsafe. And pretty much the only window of opportunity that your opponent will have is during the startup frames of your first fireball and a few frames after you've fly canceled the first fireball. That's the only window of opportunity that your opponent has. But you can actually cut down on most of those unsafe frames if you keep a bar of meter on reserve. Because when you're on the ground, if you have a bar of meter, you always have access to Shadow Serve it, which you can do on reaction if your opponent tries to punish those first few frames. Finally, Morrigan's third approach is a combination of both her zoning game and her rushdown game. So just an example, let's say that you're having trouble applying a rushdown game. Instead of forcing the issue when your rushdown game just simply isn't working, in the hybrid approach, you'll instead want to use your zoning game to create openings for your rushdown game. You'll then take advantage of your opponent being in a weak position, and you'll open him up using your rushdown game. The resulting combo will then allow you to easily transition back into zoning, and from there you just rinse and repeat. And this is going to be the way that I usually operate with my Morrigan. Of course, there's times where I'll go full on Astral Vision Fireball spam given the opportunity, but for the most part, when my Morrigan's on point, I usually use a combination of both strategies. And in this strategy, there's a lot of Fireball confirms in the combos, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So for this strategy, you almost want to use Morrigan's projectiles as sort of a poke. And the idea is that you want to throw out a projectile, and if you think the opponent is going to get hit by the projectile, you want to air dash in and use the fireball as your open, and that will confirm into a lot of combos if you do this. So that's a pretty radical change from the mindset of Morgan's zoning game, where every fireball is to keep your opponent in place to get hit with another fireball. But in the hybrid approach, you're instead going to want to treat every fireball as a possible open to a combo on your opponent. So one thing that you're going to be doing if you go with this strategy is that you're going to be catching your opponent a lot. And if you don't have any catching strategies, here's a couple of mine. So that's going to be it for the basics of each strategy, and that's also going to be it for part 2 of my Morgan guide. And part 3 is coming up soon, and it's going to mostly be about how to pressure your opponent and how to use each strategy to do so. So as always, if you want to be the first to get in on that, subscribe to the channel, and thanks again for checking me out. Peace.